Jesus, I just got my Rebel Moon sweater. But to be honest, I haven't heard good things. Please, Jesus, I just need there to be more good sci-fi in the world. Please, tell me, what did you think of Rebel Moon?
This movie shouldn't even have a 24% on Rotten Tomatoes. That seems high. That is generous. How it has a 65% audience score is an affront to God himself, because this is not a good movie no matter how you spin it.
Okay. Well, thanks, Jesus, but you know what? I think I just need to watch it for myself.
So I just watched Rebel Moon. It was something. It was a film of all time, for sure. I will say I went into this movie being optimistic. I watched the trailer. I thought the trailer looked pretty interesting. I was like, cool. So it's Zack Snyder's version of Star Wars. It's basically, I believe, a pitch that he had for a Star Wars film that was not produced. So it wasn't made into a Star Wars film, and then he was just like, you know what, I'm gonna do it anyways. And so he went to Netflix, and they were like, okay, let's make this movie. And I will say, no offense to Netflix, because Netflix does make a ton of amazing movies and shows, but it does look like it was a movie that was made by Netflix. And it's interesting because I did look up the budget for this movie, and for both parts, I believe it was $166 million. So that's not quite $100 million a movie, but still, like, it's not so far off. Then that would be like, oh man, now I have to do math, but like 83 million, I think, per. Sorry if I get the math wrong. I'm not good at math. I have number dyslexia, so that's an issue, but I digress. So it's about 83 million a movie, right? So that's still a lot of money. And I know that I am the person that also said recently, or I have said in the past, I think our budgets on movies are just getting ridiculous. Like, you don't really need 100 million or 200 million to make a good movie. You really don't. However, even if you're making it for 80 million and you're taking that, here's the thing. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It really just matters what the vision, I think, that you have. And with this, it just feels like kind of a copy and paste vision. That's the thing. There's nothing here that feels like that it's happening that's revolutionary. We're not redefining or progressing sci-fi. Not that every movie has to necessarily like be the next step in the evolution of science fiction if it's in that genre. But we do need something where it feels like you have a style, where it feels like you have intention, where things are very clear.
We're gonna have to fight.
With Star Wars, what Star Wars does really well is world building. Even if some of the stuff is ridiculous, a lot of the stuff is ridiculous in Star Wars. Lightsabers, for one. What even is a lightsaber? How does that work? The world itself, every little piece of it, I will say that George Lucas, when he was building this world, he really thought about every element in the frame. Whether that's like just a cup that someone's drinking from, whether that's a character in the background, everyone has names. It's a very rich world, and he really does think about, like, why is this character like this? He has an answer for everything. Even if some of the answers are ridiculous, he has the answer. He's thought about it. Look at these Empire guys, these people that work for the Mother World, I believe it's called. What do they look like? Do they look like anything you may have seen before? Look at the people that are from the Empire in Star Wars. They obviously have a very inspired look. We're getting some World War II German soldier vibes, But then there's Rebel Moon, and we're literally just getting it's like the same uniform. Even what the people that are deployed, the soldiers, wear, it looks like something out of, I don't know, like Modern Warfare to me. Like, it just looks like typical army guy. There is a few creatures in here that are kind of cool, I will say. There was the guy, he was like a snail guy or a worm, and he takes over someone's body basically and like speaks through them. I thought that was pretty cool. I thought even the king that they come to on the other world, his design was pretty cool. So there are some creatures in here that look cool. The Spider Woman, she looked cool. That was a cool idea, but it's just nothing that's fully developed. It kind of feels like it's half-baked. And I do actually like Zack Snyder. Like, not everything that he's done, obviously, but I do think he's a good filmmaker, and there are a lot of films that I like that he's made. And to put it out there, I am one of the people that like Sucker Punch, so maybe I have no business even reviewing films. Maybe I should just quit. Maybe I should just leave. But I'm not gonna leave because I actually feel like, even though I love Sucker Punch at least has some things that it does that are more stylized than this film. I'll say that much. And this film, the characters are so blasé. They're so stereotypical in a lot of cases that I don't even remember most of their names. The main character of the story is like one of the least interesting parts of the story. Cora, or Arthaleza, or whatever her real name is. Arthalaeus. I can't even remember, see? Arthalaeus, which we find out is her real name partway through, which it's interesting because she's trying to pretend that she's not Arthalaeus, but then she also tells the farmer guy, like, basically her backstory about, like, how she's Arthalaeus. So it's also kind of weird that she's like, I don't talk about that. But I guess it's because if maybe the Empire, the people from Motherworld knew that, then they would take her away because she's valued and she knows that she's valued. Or she doesn't want to get captured. I'm not entirely sure. But she goes by Cora, and it wasn't until basically the last fight scene in the film that I really even knew what her name was. So that's not good to me. I will say one of the most interesting people in this film also dies. And that would be the Blood Axe brother. He was actually super interesting, and so was his sister. Hopefully we'll get to see her, I guess, in part 2. If I watch part 2, I mean, I don't know. I kind of want to see how it ends just because there's also stuff that happens at the end of this movie that broke my brain. But we'll get back to that once I've talked about a few other things. I'm going to save that last little bit for the end because it's the best bit, in my opinion. Yes. So he is one of the most interesting characters, and I would say it's also just because the actor is really amazing. Who plays him? Let me look that up. He was really good. I will say also, like, the actors in this film aren't bad. Like, the actors are doing the best with what they have. Oh, the other character that I actually remember, his name is Kai. Kai was good. Also, rest in peace, Kai. Also gone. Blood Axe, Rebel Moon. Darian Blood Axe, who is, of course, how did I not recognize? He's played by Ray Fisher. Look at Ray Fisher going out there and blowing my mind with his acting, which I already knew he was a good actor. He was also my favorite part of, when we got the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League. So I'm glad to see that Zack Snyder is, like, smart enough to be like, I need to cast Ray Fisher again. Ray Fisher is amazing, underutilized, underappreciated. So I'm happy, actually. I'm really happy about that. But yeah, he is one of the best performers in the film because most people, when they're trying to convince anyone of anything, they're just like screaming their heads off. They're like, you have to listen to me. You have to do this thing. I'm making a speech. And do you know how he convinces people of things? He like comes really close to them, like here, and he's like, hey, I'm gonna do this for you because I believe in this cause. And it's like the most compelling stuff. That's a little thing we called acting, and it's very good. So he, for me, was one of the best parts of the film. I also really liked Kai, who's played by Charlie Hunnam. He's apparently from Sons of Anarchy, which I haven't seen, but I have heard great things about. I thought he was really good. Overall, I mean, the guy that plays Titus, he was also great. Basically, just everyone in this movie is actually pretty good for the most part. Definitely Ray Fisher is the standout for me, but Ray Fisher, unfortunately, is not going to make it to part 2, which is tragic. That seems like a mistake in my mind. We should have kept him. But the other element of this, so 1, the style is not great. 2, the characters are pretty forgettable, pretty stereotypical overall, despite the fact that the actors, I think, are actually doing a good job, so it's not necessarily their fault. We also have the look of this movie just overall in terms of color grading and just the imagery, just the way it looks on a screen, which I actually love when Zack Snyder adds like shine to his films. I wanted this to have like that 300, maybe not exactly that exact look, but I wanted it to have sort of this otherworldly feel. It literally feels like they're on a sound stage, and it feels like they just made the whole movie look yellow, which I also know that Zack Snyder is very stylized in his color grading, where films tend to either look blue, Sucker Punch, or yellow, like we have here with Rebel Moon. Or, in the terms of Justice League, they're just like very, I would say, desaturated. Although I guess that would lean a little bit more to yellow, maybe actually more blue. I don't know. I just find Justice League feels very gray to me, like it's very dark, which also works for what it's doing. And Sucker Punch works being blue. And this is just looks bland, and it does not make anything pop, and it just makes me feel like at times I can see that we're on a soundstage. Also, the lighting is whack in parts of this movie. The lighting is like they left the lights up in the background they're using to light everything, and rather than hiding them from us to be like, no, like we're in this underground city or whatever's happening. They just left the glare and had it be like those lights are in the background and they're supposed to be part of, I guess, the setting. They just feel like someone forgot them there. Like it was like, hey Jim, weren't you supposed to move that light out of the shot? Should we move the way the camera is or something? And Jim's just like, nah, like, I think we'll just leave it there. Like, let me look at the monitor. Oh yeah, it looks good. Don't worry about it. Like, what's happening? What happened with that? Was that a mistake or was this intentional? And if it was intentional, why? There's also a lot of stuff that just goes on too long. There's fight scenes where there's slow-mo in very weird parts and it doesn't look good. I'm okay with slow-mo in a fight sometimes, but not every time, and not when nothing is happening. And this had moments that were kind of like that. However, when the fights are not just slow-mo, there are some fights in this that are actually pretty good, for the most part. I saw a few pauses where someone was waiting for something to happen, but the last fight scene between Korra and the Admiral Atticus, or whatever his name is, when they're having that fight at the end, that was actually pretty decent, except for a few moments where I could see the actors were like waiting for the other person to, get up so the fight can continue. Where normally you would never do that in a fight. If there's a moment, you're gonna punch that other person, unless I guess you're winded. There were a few moments where I felt like someone was really winded, but the other thing is there were some reactions here that just didn't sell some of the action that was happening. So it also comes down to some actors not being able to sell me on a hit. That's just how I feel about the action in it. It feels at times very self-indulgent. This whole film feels pretty self-indulgent, let's be real. It feels quite self-indulgent. And I would say the film actually looks the best like right at the end. So that was also a thing where I was like, why does it look good now that it's ending? Why? And I was like, I feel like they filmed this part first. That's where the budget went. And they were like, well, I guess the rest of it will just look like it's on a soundstage. I don't know. So it's weird. It's like the end looks better than the rest of the film. The other thing is there's flashback sequences, right, that Korra has where she's telling her story, which not only are the most interesting parts of the film in my mind, like Korra herself is an interesting, I would say, at this period, but her backstory is super interesting, and I want to learn more about that. Instead, we just get flashbacks, and also the flashbacks look better than the rest of the movie. So I guess they filmed the flashbacks and the end of the movie first? I don't know. And of course, the final thing that I wanted to talk about is at the end of this movie, Admiral Atticus, or whatever his name is. I just said Atticus, like Atticus. Atticus. He has this cane that he loves to hit people with. This has been established throughout. He's a super, super bad guy, like the most bad guy. The whole military seems to be the most bad guy ever, except for the General Titus and Korra. Like, they're just bad for the sake of being bad. It really is bizarre. But he gets, like, sort of fought with his own walking stick. Brutalized in this final fight against Korra. Thrown off a platform into the sea, onto rocks. Teeth out of his mouth. And you are like, oh, that was karma. And it feels good, I gotta say. Him being so evil, that moment felt pretty good. However, when people have a long fall, and this sometimes does also happen in Star Wars, if you don't see the body, sometimes they survive. And when he fell off that platform, both Duck and I were watching this together, and we were like, unless he survived, but no, you couldn't survive that. That would be crazy. That would not make any sense. I think maybe there'll be a bigger bad, and then part 2, that's who we'll see. So at the end of the movie, do you know what we find out? He survives. How the military find him on the rocks, and they bring him back to life, basically. And then he talks to Emperor Palpatine, or sorry, the head of the military, who's Korra's dad, in the Matrix, or in some sort of video call that's VR or something. And he's like, you gotta go get her now. And then that's, I guess, gonna be part 2. So I have a question. Why? 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 Just let him die. So anyways, that's the movie, and that's my thoughts. And I'm just tired now from watching it. I'm just tired. Also, it's basically Seven Samurai. So if you know that story of, you know, the Seven Samurai, I have a board game about it, actually, about the Seven Samurai. It is, that's what it is. So if you're thinking, I've already know that story. If you're thinking, wasn't that A Bug's Life? Yes, and so you could watch Rebel Moon, or you could watch A Bug's Life, which I would say might be the better film between the two. Actually, I'm definitely going to say A Bug's Life is the better film between the two. All right, well, that's it for this review. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you want me to watch part 2 when it comes out. And until next time, friends, put on my Rebel Moon hoodie, and I'll say, stay nerdy. Bye.